also appreciate the history lesson that you gave. I'll tell you that when we announced the inland port in Greer, which is, if anyone's familiar with South Carolina, along the I-85 corridor adjacent to the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport, the very first question I got was, how long will it take to dig the canal from Charleston? It's a rather timely lesson. Thank you very much. In the interest of full disclosure, I will also let you know, I grew up in North Carolina. I am from Asheville, so I am as much a North Carolinian as I am a South Carolinian. So it is nice to be back home. So thank you very much. I wanted to spend a few minutes this afternoon and kind of give you an idea of what's going on in my world. It is an exciting time to be in my industry, the global trade industry, logistics, supply chain field. We have a lot going on, and it's going to impact not just South Carolina, not just the Southeast, but the entire country as we move forward. I recognize I'm on the clock, so I'll do my best to move forward as quickly as possible. I will be around afterwards if you do have any questions. I'd love to take them because I love to talk about what's going on in our world. When you look at what's going on in the port industry, it starts and stops with growth. Everything we do is responding to growth. A little bit about us. We are a top 10 container port for the United States. Being a top 10 container port, that means we are one of the top 100 global ports. We are a public sector entity. I am a state employee of the state of South Carolina and the citizens of South Carolina. We also operate our port. That is unique. That is not to be said for our friends in New York or LA and other ports around the world, around the country I should say, where they are a landlord port, not an operating port. So public sector officials, men and women, are not just owning the port, we operate the cranes, we operate the gates, which we think gives us a very distinct advantage when it comes to passing on savings to a company. We are what we call an enterprise agency, which is we are state employees, but we do not receive an appropriation from our General Assembly. So in many ways, we're a private company with a government shareholder. Everything we do is based upon our ability to project our revenue to pay off the infrastructure advancements that we need to put in place to grow. So we are, again, a state agency. I do have 4.5 million shareholders that I report to, but we don't receive an appropriation each budget cycle to run our operation. That being said, I think without a doubt we are the state's most important asset. And so we're proud of what we're doing to drive business to our operations. We are also a diverse port. A lot of what you see in here is our container business. That does make up about 80% of what we do. But we have the most sophisticated roll-on, roll-off terminal on the East Coast. We're handling BMW exported to the world. We're handling GE gas turbines. We're handling Siemens gas turbines made right here in Charlotte that are exported to the world through our state-of-the-art terminal down at Columbus Street. We also operate a terminal in Georgetown, which is purely break bulk, very critical to the concrete industry as we handle wholesale cement that is traveling around the world for construction projects. When we talk about growth, this is what our growth looks like. Unlike, or not unlike, a lot of industry and port and private companies, we saw a downturn starting in 2008. We're now recovering from that downturn, and we're recovering very, very nicely. So I'll point out in 2009, we started to tick back in the right direction, and we have not stopped since. Fiscal year 13 over 12, we grew at 9%. The port industry in the United States grew at 2%. Our nearest competitor grew at 1.8%. We're growing well ahead of the competition, well ahead of the industry. And so it should come as no surprise that if you look at 10 over or 13 over 10, we grew at an astonishing 22%. That's pretty good. In fact, that makes us the fastest growing port in the United States. Very important for our market as we move forward. Between 11 and 13, I'll also point out that of all the new cargo that came to the Southeast, 72% of it came to Charleston. So 72% of the cargo came to us. The other Southeastern ports, which would be Wilmington, Savannah, and Jacksonville, they got the rest. So again, we're growing well ahead of our competition, well ahead of the market. That being said, we also recognize that when we grow, we have to do so in a responsible manner. So we take very seriously our role in being a leader in environmental stewardship. We do that with examples such as a truck replacement program, where we are partnering with our State Department of Health and Environmental Control to provide grants to the trucking industry so that they can replace older, dirtier burning diesel engines with cleaner engines. so that we will welcome onto our terminal clean burning engines versus the heavy polluting engines of old. We've been very successful in that program. We've gotten a lot of recognition and a lot of rewards. We're also looking at ways to electrify our equipment, again, to lower our carbon footprint to the benefit of our citizens, not just in South Carolina, but obviously in the Southeast. So what is driving what's going on in our world? Well, if you're in the Southeast, you're in the fastest growing region of the country. We have more people moving into the southeastern United States than moving out. We have more people moving into this region than any other region in the country. If you believe our friends in the federal government, which we do, we're projected between now and 2030 to have our population grow by about 46%. 46% growth in our population. That's a consumer base that has to be fed by imports. Unique opportunity for us. We also lead the country in manufacturing and export. Every day, a state in the Southeast announces a new manufacturing plant, setting up operation. And those manufacturing plants are not for domestic uses only. They're exporting to the global marketplace. We lead the country in that. We lead the country in raw materials being mined and harvested and grown for export. Very important that we do that, which means we have the ability to go after discretionary cargo. The other driving factor that I'll go into in just a moment is the change in the shipping industry in and of itself, which is impacting what we do every single day. So I mentioned we lead the country in manufacturing facilities, we lead the country in export products. That is critical to what we do. Export cargo tends to be twice as heavy as import cargo. Simply put, we know how to stuff a container in this country better than people around the world. So we have to have the equipment to be able to handle those heavy containers. The carriers have to have the confidence that they can get the big ships in to maximize the benefit of those heavy containers, and we bring that to the table. The other thing that is important to note, and Ray and I were talking about this before we got started, we're well on our way as a country to becoming export dominators. Within the next 20 years, we will begin to export more than we import from the global marketplace. That is important for our long-term economic viability as a nation. We in Charleston already see that balance. We're 51% export today, 49% import. Very, very important that we maintain or strive for that balance. When we talk about the South Carolina Ports Authority, people like to assume that we are the port for the state of South Carolina. Well, certainly we are an asset to the state of South Carolina, but we're a port to the Southeast, to the rest of the country. Every single day, we have product coming across our terminals, either import or export bound, to serve 26 states. We have product coming in and going to 140 countries around the world. To say that we are a port that not just drives the economy of the Southeast or South Carolina would be an understatement. Charlotte is very, very critical to our success. This is our breadbasket, this area in the I-85 corridor. The reason, simply put, is we have competitive advantages over the nearest ports. We have a distinct advantage over our friends in Wilmington, the carrier services that call on Charleston, and we also have a cost advantage over our friends in Savannah. So if you are out there looking for import or export needs, talk to me. We're happy to help. You're critical to our growth strategy. When you look at the breakdown, it should come as no surprise that really about 50% of the business is shared between Charleston and Norfolk. I will tell you, we want to see that shift heavier towards Charleston because we do have advantages over Norfolk. And then you can see where the rest of the ports fall in line. Again, we believe we're going to continue to be a major player. As far as export markets coming out of the North Carolina area, they are driven by, of course, China. China is driving everyone's export, not just North Carolina, South Carolina as well. Honduras, the Dominican Republic, and Japan. Global markets we have to access to send our products around the world. Import countries, again, China should come as no surprise to Guatemala, Honduras, Germany, Costa Rica. That's what's driving imports into the North Carolina market. So they're very, very important markets that I encourage you to pay close attention to. I mentioned the change in the shipping industry. This is probably the single most biggest factor influencing what we do every single day. If you look at the shipping industry, they're not unlike our friends in the airline industry in that they are forming alliances. They're forming alliances to share equipment, to share service streams, to better serve what they believe is their competitive marketplace. Historically, and I apologize in the back for the fine print, the box you see up top are the three historic alliances that exist. What's important about this slide are the three, or that middle layer, the 3 or 4 companies that are not in the alliance. Those are the 3 to 4 biggest shipping companies in the world. Led by Maersk, which is the largest shipper in the world. They handle by themselves about 13.5% of the global trade on the ocean. Closely followed by MSC, which handles about 13.1% of the global trade on the open ocean. And then very closely behind that, CMA-CGM, which handles about 8%. They have historically refused to join an alliance. Rather, they wanted to be independent. But the changing landscape of these ships are forcing them to rethink what they're doing. And in fact, they are now, the 3 biggest alliances, or 3 biggest carriers in the world are now part of a single alliance, known as the P3. That alliance alone accounts for nearly 35% of the global trade on the open ocean. They're sharing the vessels, they're deploying the largest vessels on the ocean that we see calling on the ports today. They are going to drive change in our industry, and already are. But perhaps more daunting is the fact that those 3 alliances by themselves make up 97% of the global trade. So as you are looking to establish relationships with carriers, keep in mind that the leverage that you may have had 6 months, a year, 6 years ago has changed with the formation of the new alliances. And it's going to put companies in an awkward position when it comes to negotiating future steamship opportunities. The good news is those 3 alliances happen to be the largest carriers in Charleston, South Carolina. So we believe we're in a great position. So let's talk a little bit about the big ships and what that means. As I said, they are sharing assets. The ships are getting bigger. They're significantly bigger than they were 5 years ago. That shaded site you see, the ship you see up top, that is a 4,800 TEU vessel. That is 20-foot equivalent units. That's an international measurement. What you're used to seeing on the open road are 40-foot containers. So a 4,800 TEU vessel holds 2,400 40-foot containers or tractor trailers. It's the easiest way to rationalize that. Carriers historically would charge to move that container about $1,250. Doesn't matter where it's coming from, where it's going to. That's about the average of what they would charge. Then they started going big, and they introduced 8,000 TEU vessels. That's a 4,000 40-foot unit or tractor trailer vessel. They still charge $1,250 to move that container, but that vessel operates 40% more efficient than a smaller vessel. Well, that wasn't good enough. So now they're introducing 14,000 TEU vessels into the marketplace. Again, they continue to charge the same amount, and I don't fault them for that, but that vessel operates 60% more efficiently than a smaller vessel. Make no mistake, what we do is about making money, and the carriers are out there to make money, and we believe that this is what is going to drive significant changes in our industry. Put it in perspective, this is, if you've been to Charleston, and I hope you have, anyone who's been to Charleston, please raise your hand. You will see, or if you've been to the BMW plant, that is a BMW X5. You can barely see it. That is drawn to scale. Sitting next to that BMW X5 is a Boeing 787 aircraft made in Charleston, South Carolina, also drawn to scale. The light blue, if you've been to Charleston, you've seen the Yorktown sitting in our harbor. That is our Maritime Museum, also drawn to scale. 9,000 TEU vessel, we see one of these vessels every single day coming into Charleston, South Carolina, sometimes more than one, depending upon the schedule. That is drawn to scale, and we're expecting in the near future a 14,000 TEU vessel to start calling on Charleston. Our friends at Adidas in Spartanburg, South Carolina, their only North American distribution center, will tell you a 14,000 TEU vessel holds 70 million pairs of running shoes. That is factual. Put that in perspective, that is a vessel of just under 1,200 feet long, 165 feet wide, drafting 50 feet of water when fully loaded. That's the change that's driving our industry. The economies of scale are going big. These ships will never go small. They will continue to go big. And if you think that's big, I will tell you that there are 18,000 TEU vessels on deployment on the West Coast, and we have seen designs for 22,000 TEU vessels. That's what's changing my industry rapidly. So to put it in perspective, when we talk about new Panamax, not post-Panamax, new Panamax. New Panamax means a port that can handle that 14,000 TEU vessel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those ports need to be reliable in their berth access. They need to be reliable in their ability to handle that container vessel. They need to be balanced. Carriers want a balanced port. They want to bring in loaded imports and they want to take out loaded exports. A repositioning of an empty container is a non-revenue move for a carrier. It's something they do not want to do. So they want to maximize their efficiency, which means we've got to have our infrastructure scaled to respond to it. This is the MSC Stella. You can't see that in the back, but trust me when I tell you, that was a vessel coming into Charleston drafting 48 feet. That means 48 feet of that vessel is sitting underwater. We had to bring that ship in on high tide because we have 45 feet mean low water. We have a 5 to 6 foot tidal swing. We had to wait until the tidal swing was there. Why? Because we wanted to make sure we had, at minimum, 2 feet of clearance between the bottom of that keel and the river. And so that's, if you ever wonder why harbor pilots get paid well, that's why they get paid. 2 feet of clearance between that ship and the bottom of the ship. So let's talk about the East Coast. Again, I apologize to those in the back for the size of this, but if you look at what is registered or approved by the federal government to be 50 feet, we'll start up top with New York and New Jersey. It is a 50-foot approved harbor. There are 25 million people in the tri-state area outside of the port of New York and New Jersey. That is an import market, has to be fed. Very little exports come out of New York. But every service stream calling on the East Coast has to have a New York call to make it work. They have a 50-foot channel. Their problem, they have a bridge that's too low. So they're spending about $1.6 billion to raise the Bayonne Bridge to allow a 14,000 TEU vessel to call them. And we absolutely want to make sure that they get that bridge raised. Baltimore is also a 50-foot channel. The challenge that Baltimore faces is the steam time to go from open ocean to the channel, or excuse me, to the harbor, to the terminals. That's about a 10-hour steaming time. Time is money. That's carriers that are not on the open ocean, very much like the airline industry. They don't like to be at a gate. Carriers in the shipping industry don't like to be steaming to a channel. Norfolk, of course, is a military installation. They will get whatever they need, and we certainly support that. We want to make sure our men and women in the military have everything that they need. And then you have Miami. Miami is also authorized to be 50 feet. Miami is a cruise terminal. Cruise ships usually draft about 35 feet. They've been authorized to go to 50 feet. They believe that they're going to drive business into the Southeast. We respect their position, but we respectfully disagree with it. Because the reality is, it's not the movement on the open ocean that is the most costly part of a freight move, is the inland cost. And we don't believe that carriers or customers are going to want to offload in Miami and then ship that product to Charlotte or to Atlanta or to Asheville. It doesn't make economic sense. So when we talk South Atlantic, we're talking 4 ports: Wilmington, Charleston, Savannah, and Jacksonville. Wilmington is a much smaller footprint than Charleston. They do not have plans to deepen their harbor. They are a niche port, very focused on break bulk, and they do that very, very well. Savannah does have a harbor deepening strategy. It is about a $650 million project that will take them to 47 feet. They would still be inferior to what we handle in Charleston today. Jacksonville, of course, the Port of Jacksonville is in downtown Jacksonville. That is a significantly costly project if they were to deepen their harbor, something that we don't foresee as likely. And then you have us in Charleston. We have the capabilities to go to 50 feet. We're well on our way to getting post 45, as we call it. We believe that we will be the gateway for products coming in and out. So we're the only harbor in the Southeast today that can support the biggest ships. We will always be the deepest and the only harbor that can support the biggest ships moving forward. Which leads to the challenge of investment. How do we invest and continue to invest in infrastructure to stay ahead of what is occurring in our world? Well, I can tell you what we're doing. We're spending between now and 2020 $2 billion in infrastructure improvements. That's $2 billion with a B, to improve the infrastructure related to our ability to move freight in and out of the Port of Charleston. To break that down, and again, I apologize if you can't see this, $700 million of that is tied to the Navy-based terminal. It is the only new permanent under construction terminal in the U.S. East Coast, being built at the southern end of our Navy base. That is a $700 million project. We have just concluded the expenditure related to the South Carolina Inland Port in Greer. That was a $50 million project. And we're spending another $600 million to improve our existing terminals, our berth space, our container handling equipment, new cranes, et cetera, to make sure that we can serve those big ships. So that's about $1.3 billion that we, the Ports Authority, are spending in the next 8 years to improve our infrastructure need. And when I say we, again, I go back to we do not receive an appropriation for our operations. So that is money that we're going to the bond market to float in support of infrastructure investments, and we have to drive the business to pay off that debt. The state of South Carolina is contributing to our infrastructure to the tune of $700 million. $300 million is dedicated to our harbor deepening effort. When we go to deepen our harbor, or anyone that goes to deepen our harbor, their harbor, there's a formula that is applied. The state or local municipality is responsible for 60% of that funding. The federal government is responsible for 40% of that funding. We have put aside 100% of the funding to cover the cost of deepening our harbor. Why? Quite frankly, we don't believe that the federal government is going to be in a position to provide us with the 40% when we're ready to dig. So we're providing the federal government with an IOU. We're the only port in the country that can say we have 100% of our harbor deepening money sitting in a bank ready to go. The state has also put $225 million in the bank to widen I-26 into Charleston to feed directly into our new Navy-based terminal. And the state has set aside $130 million to develop what is called an intermodal container transfer facility, or an ICTF, outside of our new terminal operation, which will be a state-owned, state-operated ICTF transfer facility. So very quickly on the harbor deepening, again, I said we have the money in the bank. We did get Congress to pass the WRRDA, Water Resource Reform Development Act, which is critical to allow us authorization to dig. Our study, which is being supported by the Obama administration as a We Can't Wait project, is scheduled to be completed by 15. Again, the Bayonne Bridge in New York, they believe they'll have it raised by 16. And we believe that we will be post 50 feet by 2018. Having dual capacity is critical to our success, and so we are leaning very heavily on our friends in Norfolk Southern and at CSX to make sure that we maintain a fair, equal, and balanced access, because we need competitive rail rates to get our products in and out. Very quickly about the inland port, it is open and operational. We broke ground March 1 of 2013. We accepted containers November 1 of 2013. Quite a fast-moving project. Again, at $50 million. What makes it beneficial is it gives us access to a captive audience, not just in the upstate of South Carolina, but in western North Carolina, Charlotte, eastern Tennessee, and North Georgia. Halfway between Charlotte and Atlanta, an ideal location to supply the two largest urban areas in the southeast. And if you go 500 miles off of Greer, South Carolina, you hit 94 million people. It's 94 million consumers that have to be fed. This is our new terminal under construction. We're about $250 million into it. If you were in Charleston, you would see the outer wall has been built, and we've begun backfilling. We're building out to the open channel versus bringing the channel to us. Long term, that is more cost effective. That will increase our capacity by 50%. So when you look at what becomes a critical year for us, it is 2018. So we're getting very, very close. So we do have some challenges. And what are they? Well, we have to add new shipping services. It's one thing to have the cargo base, but if we don't have the ships to go around the world, it doesn't matter. We're recruiting new service strings every single day. We're one of the least expensive ports to run cargo through. We're a private business with a state shareholder. We've got to look out for our margins, and so we're looking to improve our margins as we make those investments, but keep them within reality. We've got to grow our non-container capacity. Again, critical for what we do, provide more transload opportunities. We're a balanced port. We have the equipment, products coming to us for export, unit trains coming in from the Midwest, from Texas to be transloaded in containers. Critical that we continue to focus on that. North Carolina is known for pork and poultry production, which means we have to enhance our refrigerated or reefer capability. And that is something we're looking at doing every single day. And while rail is important to what we do, Still about 80% of our product comes in and out via truck. We've got to make sure we have a healthy and prosperous trucking community. And of course, as I mentioned, we have to serve the growing Southeast, which means new distribution centers. As far as goals, our goals are straightforward. Continue to grow above market. If we're not growing above market, we're dying. We intend to continue our streak and grow above market. We want to be the preferred port for U.S. clients, not just existing industry, but new companies as they're looking to locate in the Southeast, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky. We have to make sure our capacity stays ahead of the need, and that's why we're investing that $2 billion. And our goal is to continue to be not just the deepest harbor in the southeastern United States, but we believe we can be the deepest harbor on the U.S. East Coast. We also have to be innovative in everything we do. We've got to continue to look at our processes and make sure that we're doing what we're doing very, very well. And of course, we need to do our best to attract companies or port-dependent businesses to our state, and I would tell you also to the Charlotte region, to North Carolina, to Tennessee. We can't have them all in South Carolina, as much as I would love to say we could, but we are the port not just for South Carolina, not just for the Southeast, but the U.S. East Coast. So bottom line, what will it take in summary? It's going to take a lot of hard work, and we need your help. And we need your help. We are aggressively marketing our port. We're aggressively selling our port, but you all are an extension of our sales team, and we need you to help us in that process. That requires collaboration and leadership, not just with Columbia, not just with Raleigh, but with Charlotte, with Asheville, and with other states. We are not afraid of public-private partnerships, and so we look forward to developing those partnerships. Again, I mentioned pricing and margin improvement. That's something that's critical. And we got to make sure that we keep our friends in Columbia happy, because again, they are extraordinarily supportive of every single thing we do. So that is an awful lot in a short amount of time. I appreciate your patience, and I will be happy to answer questions, but I think I'm up against the clock. So I'll be happy to hang out afterwards and answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.